right, hello everyone. A lot of eventful things happening today, so I thought I'd just come on here and kind of break it all down. Right now, I'll just start where we are right now. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky just addressing his people. The tone that he's striking is calm. He's essentially telling them that that is their country, that they have nothing to worry about. He's really stressing the idea that this is their situation to determine their future at this point. He's not going to let Russia really dictate what comes next in this saga. That's really what he's trying to instill in the people in Ukraine. But there's pictures coming out of the country of people just on their phones watching the live address. There's no doubt that it's a scary time for people in Ukraine right now. In fact, we know that the United Nations Security Council will be holding a meeting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, an emergency meeting. At that meeting, we should hear from representatives from the United States, from Ukraine, Russia as well. I mean, all of those countries are members, so we should get a lot of developments or at least responses to what's happening right there. We'll dive into exactly what happened throughout the day so people have a better idea of exactly what happened and kind of go through exactly the chain of events that led us to where we are. But just starting where we are right now, that is what Zelensky is saying. The ABC News reporting that the United States is urging Zelensky to move west to the city of Lviv and so far west, for example, that he could escape to Poland in the event that Russia were to launch a large-scale invasion. As of right now, we know that Russian President Vladimir Putin, in his decree earlier today, where he really declared independence for the two cities in the Donbas region, Luhansk and Donetsk. He said that those two regions are going to be independent in the eyes of the Russian government from now on. And in his decree, he said that he's going to be sending, through the Russian Defense Ministry, peacekeepers. And of course, that means military into that region. Now we're hearing tonight from senior administration officials that alone does not amount to an invasion. A senior administration official telling reporters tonight that there have been Russian forces in that region for the better part of 8 years, so that within itself does not amount to an invasion. Nonetheless, the White House earlier tonight did take some steps, slapping sanctions or announcing that it will slap sanctions on entities that really do business in that eastern part of Ukraine. Those aren't the full sanctions that we've been talking about over the past couple of days that would be applied to Russia in the event of an invasion, such as when it comes to oil, gas, the SWIFT banking thing, although we're hearing that won't be in the initial sanctions that are being put out tonight. But I just want to start out from the beginning of the day and work to where we are right now, because as I said, there's a lot of moving parts right now. A lot of developments, a lot to keep an eye on. We're seeing some reports that perhaps there may be Russian equipment making its way into eastern Ukraine right now. That has not been confirmed at this point, but we do know that the United States pulled back some of its diplomatic staff out of Kiev into Poland, actually, and so they're preparing for the worst. They may go back tomorrow morning if the invasion does not take place, but there's no doubt that the United States is preparing for the worst at this point right now. So once again, we're just going to go back through exactly what we've been looking at over the past couple of days, what led us to this event, because it's been a really bizarre couple of hours, for lack of a better word. So as I said, right now, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky speaking to his people right now. We're waiting on other developments. We should get that tonight, but just going through exactly where we started before. I mean, just this morning, the United States was raising the alarms. Jake Sullivan on ABC News saying that they're expecting an invasion. This was before Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that he would be declaring independence of those regions in eastern Ukraine. The same words that we've been hearing over the past couple of hours, they were taking to the airwaves, essentially raising the alarm as they've been recently. Here's Jake Sullivan, if I can get the sound going.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we're just going to get right into it. Is President Biden still convinced that Putin is going to invade Ukraine, and has anything changed?
All signs look like President Putin and the Russians are proceeding with a plan to execute a major military invasion of Ukraine. We have seen just in the last 24 hours further moves of Russian units to the border with no other good explanation other than they're getting into position to attack. We couldn't predict the exact time or day, but it certainly looks like the Russians are proceeding.
Joining us.
So there you go right there. I hope you guys were able to hear that. I was able to. If you weren't, whatever, we're flying by the seat of our pants right here, as the saying goes. But Jake Sullivan essentially saying that the troops and the motions that we're seeing up against the Ukrainian border show nothing less than preparation for an invasion. Now that's something that we've known up to this point. We just got a report earlier, late last week I should say, that now there's intelligence suggesting there could be 190,000 Russian troops along the Ukrainian border. We've seen drastic movements over the past couple of days from those Russian positions, not only staying at their bases, but transporting closer to the border, getting in attack positions. That is something that really was kind of tipping off the administration as to what we could see next. So they've been raising the alarm, and to be quite frank, they've kind of been on it through this entire time. There's been some questions about where they're getting their intelligence, show the evidence behind it, but it's been clear that they do have intelligence coming out of Russia, and their approach has been to vocalize it, to publicize it. And to some degree, you could argue it's been effective, because unlike Crimea in 2014, President Putin can't claim that this is all reactionary, responsive. We have essentially seen the game plan been laid out this entire time. There would be false flags. Putin would use that as a justification in order to have an incursion into Ukraine. They've put the playbook out there. We've seen it kind of take shape in exactly the way that they've been saying. So Putin really doesn't have that same advantage as maybe he did back in 2014 of saying this is reactionary, this is kind of a developing situation. It's clear that this has been in the works for a long time. And in fact, I want to show you something that's been circulating online. So this is a nationalist figure within Russia in itself. I would play it, but it's in Russian right here. But he says during this clip, I'll let it play in case anyone does speak Russian, but I'll also read right there. At 4 a.m. on the 22nd of February, you'll feel our new policy. I'd like 2022 to be peaceful, but I love the truth. For 70 years, I've said the truth. It won't be peaceful. It will be a year when Russia once again becomes great. Now, he said that on December 27th of 2021. And now here we are, February 22nd, the date that he says. We're getting close to 4 a.m. Moscow time. In fact, I believe it is 3 a.m. Moscow time, math. I mean, we're looking at exactly what he was saying a couple of months ago. So this by no means is a reactionary measure by Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin can't claim that this is something that's responding to different situations. And in fact, you guys may remember just a couple of days ago, the leader of the Russian-backed separatist movements in Donetsk, in Luhansk, they both published these videos saying, we're under attack by Ukrainian forces, we need to evacuate people out right now. And when you look at the metadata that was behind those videos, it was actually recorded 2 days prior. So we see that this is very much so orchestrated. And I will get back to the orchestration right there. If I don't, someone mention it in the comments, because it's a really fascinating thing that we saw today with Russian President Vladimir Putin's Security Council meeting. But getting back to where we were before, the administration has been raising alarms, as it has been over the past couple of weeks, even more so today. And then, of course, we saw this big National Security Council meeting taking place with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and it was a bizarre scene. I mean, it was just one of those things where Putin was sitting at a table, all of his advisors were about 20 feet away at the closest. One by one, they would come up and he would ask them questions, essentially trying to solicit the answers that he was really looking for. And there was this one exchange that you're looking at right now on your screen that was just so bizarre. You don't even need to be able to speak Russian to really understand how uncomfortable it was. So this is the head of the essentially spy agency within Russia. He comes up and he's kind of laying out the situation of what's going on in Eastern Europe, and Russian President Vladimir Putin asks him, would you agree with us, or would you say that we should recognize Donetsk and Luhansk as independent regions? And this individual responds by saying, well, I think that we should welcome into the Russian Federation. And Putin interrupts him, and you could just see it on his face. I mean, you're looking at it on the screen right now, and he says, we're not talking about if they should be part of the Russian Federation. We're talking about if these individual cities, these individual regions should be looked at as independent sovereign states. And of course, this individual agrees with Russian President Vladimir Putin, but perhaps his initial response is kind of foreshadowing or forecasting what's happening in this entire saga, because his initial response was, I think they should be welcomed into the Russian Federation. Now, that is something way different than just recognizing them as an independent sovereign. Instead, he's taking it a step further and saying they should be part of Russia. So it's kind of interesting to see his response. He's supposed to be the intelligence chief within Russia, and then Vladimir Putin kind of walking him through the entire layers altogether. So I would play this clip, but it's in Russian, and you can go to my Twitter feed if you do want to see it. But it was a very bizarre thing throughout its entire time. And I mentioned before about how the videos that were posted by the Russian-backed separatist leaders in Donetsk, in Luhansk, published those videos calling for the people to evacuate because they were under a threat, and how those videos, when you looked at the metadata, actually showed that they were recorded 2 days prior. So they were manufactured, and a bunch of journalists who were watching this National Security Council meeting in Moscow noticed that the watch of one of the ministers, the defense minister, was set to 5 hours prior. And I mean, he's a wealthy guy, I'm sure, you know, he can check the time and afford watches that can keep up with it and all that. So it kind of suggested that once again, we were watching a pre-recorded video that was being televised, by the way, throughout all of Russia. And once again, it's a dramatic, probably pre-recorded video that shows that it was recorded earlier in the day and then brought in front of the Russian people at a time where President Putin and the rest of the Kremlin thought it was more advantageous, or they wanted to make sure that everything went according to plan, which is kind of ironic because we saw throughout that entire Security Council briefing that it didn't look like it was going so smoothly. And another problem that surfaced, by the way, in all of that, all of the individuals who took the podium in front of Putin looked so uncomfortable, so just out of their element. And that is a concern by US intelligence officials, that President Putin is surrounding himself with these very much so nationalist figures, very much so hawkish figures, as they're known. But perhaps that even they are such in a position where they're fearing Putin that they're afraid to really talk up about some of the concerns that they do have. And we've heard that over the past couple of days, such as them warning that perhaps Putin doesn't understand what it would take to launch a full invasion of Ukraine. I say this and I'll say it again, that Russia had its own Afghanistan moment at one point. They tried to nation build. It was a blemish on their history. They have, of course, had to eventually pull out. The United States didn't learn from that. They essentially did the same thing to a lesser avail as well. But the idea of Putin trying to take all of Ukraine is a very hard thing to try to digest, because that's not, there would be guerrilla warfare, urban warfare. It would be a very bleak thing for them to go through. And that's why perhaps we're seeing this more pivot to an incursion taking place. We'll really get into the details of what's happening because it's important. But as of right now, we can see that Putin is focusing on this eastern Ukrainian region, the Donbas region, those two cities in particular, Donetsk and Luhansk. That's really what he's focusing on right now. Those are Russian-speaking areas, as well as Crimea was. So there is perhaps a strategic advantage in doing so, as in addition to the fact that you're not making a full incursion going all the way across Ukraine. But it's worth pointing out that even from Kyiv, Belarus right now, they're holding joint drills, Russia and Belarus. The U.S. intelligence officials say it's only about a 3-hour or a 3-day incursion that would go from Belarus into Kyiv. And I think that's why U.S. intelligence officials in the White House are really warning Zelensky right now, like, you got to get west, you got to get out of Kyiv, so that if something does happen, we can get you to Poland, we can get you to safety. Now it'll be interesting to see what Zelensky does. In his address, he said that he's not going anywhere, so it's kind of interesting to see how he's playing this all out. But he's going to have some decisions to be made over the past couple of days. And it's worth noting, too, that the world markets and the Russian markets in particular were not responding kindly to Vladimir Putin's speech. And now we know that there's going to be sanctions. We know that the Russian economy is essentially going to be decimated if NATO allies, European allies, do follow through with the harsh sanctions that they've talked about over the past couple of days. But take a look at this chart right here. The ruble, just as Putin was talking, this is throughout the entirety of his speech, that's it crashing right there. I mean, and I think I have another post showing the stock market from today in Russia, which I'll bring up as well. But it kind of goes to show you, I mean, if you're looking at economics and if you're looking at the prosperity of Russia from this point forward, this was not the move. This is a move that Putin is strictly taking out of ego. And we'll get to his speech in a second because, I mean, it was quite remarkable. It was, yeah, here we go. I'll pull this up for you guys. It was quite remarkable to watch the speech because, I mean, it was an airing of grievances of essentially Putin's dismay with the destruction of the Soviet Union. So this is the Russian stock market just today after Putin's initial Security Council meeting. So once again, responding horribly to the news, but that's just part of it. Within the speech that he gave earlier tonight, this is what it looked like. I mean, just kind of crashing, essentially Putin saying that we're going to put away any economic prosperity, which was already dwindling. I mean, at this point, Russia is a glorified gas station with nuclear bombs, but it's flexing its muscles today, so perhaps I should watch my mouth. But the speech that Putin was giving today was one that was just filled with remorse about the way that the Soviet Union has collapsed. In fact, he had very threatening language for former Soviet states as well. If I was in Lithuania or Estonia tonight, I would probably not be sleeping easy, because it had nothing to do with NATO. He didn't mention NATO until about 20 minutes into the speech within itself. He didn't really have much to say about the rationale behind his invasion. It was strictly, we have been wronged throughout our entire history. You want to see what decommunization looks like? We're about to show you. I mean, he was taking aim at Ukraine as a country within itself for siding with the West. I mean, the point of the speech was to delegitimize the whole existence of a Ukrainian state altogether. I mean, it was really something spectacular to watch because, quite frankly, it seemed rather unhinged. It wasn't very rehearsed as far as trying to get international recognition or at least acceptance. I mean, this is something that Putin has written about extensively over the years. A former KGB agent himself. I mean, it was really interesting to watch just him kind of air out his grievances in a very public way, which quite frankly will probably hurt him on the international stage at some point, because at this point, I mean, we've heard China speak out against the actions. We've heard tonight Turkey speak out against the actions. Russia really doesn't have an ally in this entire saga. I mean, right before this really started escalating, Putin and Xi Jinping met, and people were perhaps speculating that now this means that China will move on Taiwan. Maybe they're orchestrating something, but China has come out with statements that have essentially said, like, what Russia is doing right now is inappropriate. We can't be following through on this. It's a rather egregious act on behalf of Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. So Russia is alone in this, and I think that's what makes it a little bit more scary, because as I was saying, Putin is not speaking from a military standpoint. He's not speaking from an economic standpoint. This is strictly an egotistical type of rush that he's having right now in a furtherance of trying to reunite the former Soviet Union. I mean, it's a very bizarre thing that's taking place. So as we know, later in the night, Putin would announce the recognition of the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk. He signed it on live television with the two Russian separatist leaders from Ukraine in the room right there. So it was a quick thing. It was a very rapid type of order. And then we eventually did get the decree that came out. And I want to pull up. Well, I'll focus on this one. We eventually did get the decree, and the wording of the decree is what everybody's talking about right now, because it's alarming in the sense that he said that he would be sending peacekeepers, Russian military members, into eastern Ukraine in order to make sure that nothing starts happening. And once again, we have seen some videos surfacing online. I'm not going to show them, or I'm not going to really get into them too much, because as we've talked about on this stream over the past couple of days, there's been a lot of misinformation coming out. You think about the TikTok videos that have been coming out of Russia. I haven't seen anyone be punished for those. You know that they would be slapping down the law on them if the Kremlin didn't want those coming out. They're always posted anonymously on Telegram. A lot of people think that could be kind of Kremlin misinformation within itself, or trying to really stir up fear going to negotiations. I mean, there's no doubt that we've seen equipment on the move, and we have satellite images to really solidify what we've been seeing. But I think that when it gets to the anonymous stuff, that's where I like to see a source behind it before I really get on board. And I'm going to say that the same with what we're seeing tonight as well, because we know that Ukraine is on edge. We know the people of Ukraine are on edge. And for everybody else, I also suggest not sharing Ukrainian troop positions or anything like that. I know that you like to get the clicks and you like to get the new information out there, but think about a strategic thing as well. But someone pointed this out as well, that in Georgia 2008, the decree, almost word for word with the decree that was signed tonight as far as Ukraine goes. So, I mean, history repeats itself. What do they say? The past is only the future with the lights on, right? We are seeing a lot of similarities. And in fact, if anybody wants to see what happened in Georgia in 2008, there's been books written about it, but it's kind of an interesting dilemma that went on there as well, because President George W. Bush, facing a very similar situation, was asked if he wanted to take military action against Russia, because essentially they were doing the same thing. They kind of dressed it up under the guise of saying, we're going to go in there as liberators, it's going to be a temporary thing. And what happened is actually Georgia engaged, and maybe there's something to be learned from that. Georgia engaged militarily against a limited amount of Russian troops. Russia then, of course, escalated. The Georgian military unable to match up against the Russian military, and things escalated. George W. Bush was asked if he wanted to take military action, and he ended up siding against it. But what he did do was he ended up sending in a surplus of aid on military vehicles. Now that served two purposes. One, of course, being getting the aid in there to the Georgian people, but also because they were on military vehicles, it sent the signal that they were prepared to take military action if needed. It was an extra level of security. So that was something that I was reading about today that I thought was kind of interesting, maybe something to learn from right here. And I think that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky knows this. I mean, there's been a very overt effort for him not to engage Russia in any way, not to engage Russian separatists. We know that there's been a large amount of ceasefire violations over the past couple of days. So it's good to see that there's restraint, because once again, you have to put yourself in the mind of some of these people on the front lines. We're talking about 25 to 27-year-olds tasked with defending their country, but at the same time making sure that they have such good judgment that they don't fire off a shot that could perhaps start this major conflict. Because, I mean, this is a very, very volatile situation. All it takes is one mistake, and just like that, you have Russian military moving into Ukraine on a large-scale invasion with that justification that they need. That's all they are looking for, this small type of pretext in order to launch this large-scale incursion. But of course, right after President Putin made that announcement, the White House putting out this statement saying, "We have anticipated a move like this from Russia and are ready to respond immediately. President Biden will soon issue an executive order that will prohibit new investment, trade, and financing by U.S. persons to, from, or in the so-called DNR and LNR." Those are those Russian-backed separatist areas that are still part of Ukraine, which kind of makes this statement a little bit interesting, because to some degree you're sanctioning Ukraine right there. I mean, I know it's the separatist areas and all that, but these are voting members of the Ukrainian government. I mean, these are active parties in government. And so the decision, as of right now, we are hearing that additional measures are going to be applied tomorrow. But as of right now, that's the measure that the White House has taken in response to all of this. As I was saying, so here's Interfax saying that following all of that, a large number of armored vehicles were seen on the territory of the Donetsk People's Republic. As eyewitnesses say, 2 columns of armored vehicles are on the territory of the DPR and follow to the north and west of the Republic. So that goes in line with exactly what Russian President Vladimir Putin was calling for. I mean, he said that in his decree that there would be an infusion of peacekeepers in order to make sure that things don't escalate in that region. But I mean, we can look at what's happening in Belarus right now, because I have a feeling that those Russian troops aren't going anywhere either. They've been there for joint drills for the past month or so. They were supposed to end on February 20th. On the 20th, we learned that they were getting extended for another day. It's been now almost 2 days, and there's no sign that those troops are going to go anywhere. So, I mean, the Lukashenko regime to begin with is nothing more than a Russian puppet regime, but nonetheless a sovereign country as it's supposed to be nonetheless. But I can almost guarantee you that Russian troops are going to be there longer than just the drills that were initially announced. And they serve a strategic advantage too, as I was saying. I mean, they're just north of Ukraine, about 72 hours from Kyiv as far as a military incursion goes. So, I mean, once there seems to be Russian troops in your region, they don't seem to leave. Now, of course, people could point to Kazakhstan and say that that's an example of them eventually leaving, but once again, a totally different situation when we're looking at a potential incursion. Putin is saying that there's potential genocide going on in eastern Ukraine in order to justify his incursion into eastern Ukraine. This is what I was talking about before, ever since the response, what comes next in all of this? Because here's the thing, when it comes to Putin's decision, this could have been an off-ramp for him in some way, saying, you know what, I'm going to say that this is a sovereign, independent region of Ukraine, leave it at that, so that way he could at least go back to the Russian people and say, look, I did do something, but then also look at the Western allies in NATO and say, you guys were bizarre for ever thinking that I was going to invade. That was never the plan. Look, you're wrong once again. So there's two directions that he can go in right now, and one is the going back to his people and saying, I've done enough, I recognize them as sovereign independence, or he could follow through with an invasion of Ukraine. And so, in fact, this is it's already showing right now, but this is the video that's circulating on social media saying that these are the peacekeepers going into the Donbas region of Ukraine, of course, the eastern part of Ukraine. Once again, this is unconfirmed. I haven't seen anybody else confirm this anywhere else. I'll keep an eye on it just in case. It has been circulating, and I did see a Ukrainian member of parliament posted it as well, but once again, unconfirmed video at this point, but this is what I want to focus on. So Jennifer Jacobs from Bloomberg News, terrific reporter, one of the more well-sourced reporters in all of the White House. The Biden administration has ordered all remaining State Department personnel out of Ukraine. The embassy had previously relocated from Kiev to the western city of Lviv. Now they're shifting to Poland. That's exactly what we're hearing from ABC News, that the State Department is asking Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to do as well, move to the western city, and then if an invasion takes place, then to leave there, to relocate, and get to Poland if it gets to that point. So a lot of moving parts. This was issued right before Zelensky gave his speech to the Ukrainian people about an hour ago, once again calling for calm. So that's the big gist of where we are right now. Now, as I said, there should be a United Nations Emergency Security Council meeting getting started any minute now. We should hear from representatives from the United States, Ukraine, even Russia. I mean, Russia's a part of that organization. It's an open conference. They should get some at least guidance on what exactly everybody's thinking at this point. But for anybody who just got here who does want to catch up, I'll just give a quick roundabout summary of where we're at and what's happening right now, kind of trying to go in chronological order. But long story short, the big story that came out of today is that Russian President Vladimir Putin declared through decree that these two regions in eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk, would be seen by the Russian Federation as sovereign independent nations. Now, that, of course, right off the bat, people started getting worried because President Putin over the past couple of days has been amounting the treatment of Russian speakers in that region to genocide. A lot of people fearing that that could be the pretext or the justification that he uses in order to launch an invasion. That was the first major storyline of today. He said that about an hour later, we saw the decree that actually came down, to which it called for peacekeeping operators within that region through the Russian Ministry of Defense. So that means military members moving into that region in order to basically have the disguise of being a peacekeeping mission. We're monitoring a situation of whether or not there are vehicles entering that region as of right now. Once again, unconfirmed video, so I'm not going to get too much into it, but there are fears that there could be an infusion of Russian troops into that region at some point tonight. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky wrapping up his speech about a half hour ago, really trying to urge calm among the Ukrainian people during this time, saying they have nothing to fear, that at the end of the day, it is their country, they're the ones who determine their fate. But we know that U.S. intelligence and the White House are fearful at this moment. We're going to learn more about the sanctions that will be applied in response to this. We know that the European Union is calling for it. We know that other NATO countries are calling for it. The White House announcing that they'll be applying an executive order that isn't exactly the full-scale sanctions that we've been talking about over the past couple of days, but nonetheless, there should be a response right there. But the big thing is that the U.S. Embassy removing all of its diplomats out of Kiev and into Poland for the night. So that suggests that there is perhaps fears of an escalation taking place tonight. And they say that those individuals could return in the morning if an invasion does not take place. But we also know that the United States government is calling on Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to move to the western city of Lviv. Someone correct me on the pronunciation if I'm butchering that. So that is the big kind of development right there. They're calling for Zelensky to get to that city westward so that he could evacuate to Poland in case Russia follows through on a large-scale invasion. As of right now, the initial fears are that perhaps these troops are going to move into the eastern Ukrainian area, the Donbas region, but there are fears that this could just be the beginning of a pretext. If you listen to Russian President Vladimir Putin's speech tonight, it was a speech that spoke at the heart of this entire issue and really spoke to the idea that he does not believe that Ukraine is itself a legitimate state, or any former USSR country for that matter. It was a very kind of his own version of history going through exactly how we got to this point, and it all comes back to the fall of the Soviet Union, something that he has evidently taken very personally. He's written extensively about it, but that is the fears of right now, that perhaps this pretext is already underway, perhaps that an incursion is just the beginning, that he puts troops under this peacekeeping mission in the eastern part of Ukraine, and then from there it all stems out. Because I mean, it's one thing to have a select amount of troops in this area. In fact, we're hearing tonight that a senior administration official told reporters that troops in that region does not within itself amount to an invasion. And they said because there have been Russian operators in this area dating all the way back to 2014, that it's not necessarily anything new that would trigger sanctions, not anything new that would amount to an invasion in the eyes of the government. So that was kind of an interesting take, but I mean, I think that if we see an infusion of troops in that area, and especially if they go anywhere else, then we would see the type of response that people like Joe Biden, Antony Blinken, all these people have been talking about. And it's worth mentioning too that, I mean, President Biden and Secretary of State Antony Blinken have both said at different times that if one Russian troop enters Ukraine, that amounts to an invasion right there. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of response we're looking at come tomorrow morning. I mean, right now, we're waiting for sanctions to come down. I just want to see if there's anything else that is worth touching on, because we only know that right now, the only thing that we know right now is that the White House is saying that it's going to issue an executive order really targeting entities in that eastern Ukrainian part of the country. And I do want to learn a little bit more about that before we talk about it, because it seems like that would only kind of hurt people within Ukraine. It doesn't really seem to punish the Russian government within itself, the violator in this situation, maybe Russian-backed separatists, but that kind of seems like a workaround of anything else. So I'm willing to bet that tomorrow morning we will get some more information. In fact, I do want to share this with you, just because now it's attributed to another news site, but it appears as if Al Jazeera has clear video. Let's see here. Yeah, Al Jazeera has footage from Donetsk, Ukraine, showing a pretty clear picture of Russian forces entering the area. So, I mean, now that we have someone to attribute this to, we can say that, yeah, there you go. So we do have some visuals coming in of some Russian troops and Russian equipment, I should say, entering Donetsk, Ukraine. Now, of course, that is one of the eastern Ukrainian cities that Russian President Vladimir Putin said tonight that there would be liberation from, start recognizing them as a sovereign independent. So I mean, here we go. I mean, we do finally have some video. This is from Mosh Schwartz for WYN. And here's some other video too. I feel okay showing it since we have someone to accredit it to at this point. Before, it was just kind of Telegram videos. I don't like sharing those because, as I was saying, sometimes that's Russian misinformation within itself. But this video uploaded tonight is from Grayvoron in the Belgorod region of Russia, just 4.9 miles from the Ukrainian border. So this one right here that you're looking at, this is about 4 miles away from the Ukrainian border, but this one being attributed to Al Jazeera, this appears to show actual Russian artillery and equipment moving into the Donetsk, Ukraine region. So this could be the beginning of what we're talking about. I mean, once again, in the decree, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that this was under the guise of being a peacekeeping mission. But there's nothing to keep the peace from. I should have said this way earlier on. His claims of genocide are nonsense. There's no genocide being committed against Russian speakers in eastern Ukraine. And a couple of days ago, there were reports that perhaps Ukraine was planning to attack the separatists in eastern Ukraine. You have to think about how nonsensical that would be. These two regions have been in conflict for the better part of 8 years. Do you think that Ukraine is going to wait until right now, when there's 190,000 Russian troops at the border ready to invade at any moment, that now would be the time for them to launch an invasion? It's nonsensical. And if you go over the videos that were posted from the separatist leaders late last week that showed that they were actually pre-recorded 2 days prior, if you look at the watch on the individual tonight, the foreign minister that said that it was actually 5 hours earlier than the time it was actually airing, this has been orchestrated the entire way through. And in one way you could say that's been the success of the White House up to this point, is vocalizing the intelligence that they have, so we're not left in the dark. I mean, here we are at the point where not only have we predicted essentially what has come up to this point, but we could probably get a good idea of what comes next in all of this, right? I mean, one could assume that these peacekeepers are going to go in there, there's going to be reports of hostilities taking place, and that'll be used as the justification to bring in reinforcements or to have a permanent occupation in this area, the same way that Russia does in Crimea right now. We've seen the playbook been laid out up to this point, but it is interesting to see some actual movements coming in, actually getting some real information of what's happening on the ground right now, because I mean, I'm learning this with you at this point. We knew that there was a threat of perhaps Russian equipment making its way in tonight, and I showed you that clip before for everybody just joining us. I do want to bring that up one more time, but where was it? I might have closed the tab. But essentially, for everybody just joining us, here we go. So this is a nationalist figure within Russia, someone who's been very close in politics for years at this point. And this is him speaking on December 27th. He says, at 4 a.m. on February 22nd, which is Moscow time. I mean, it should be underway, right? I mean, what time is it in Moscow? I think they're an hour ahead of, I'm in Rome, by the way. I think they're an hour ahead of me, but if they're two, oh, so there you go, 4:21. So this falls right in line with what he was saying. On December 27th, he says, at 4 a.m. on February 22nd, you'll feel our new policy. I'd like 2022 to be peaceful, but I love the truth. For 70 years, I've said the truth. It won't be peaceful. It will be a year when Russia once again becomes great. So now here we are on February 22nd at just after 4 a.m. And that seems to be coming to light. I mean, what he said it seems to be exactly accurate. So it's not out of the ordinary to say that this was very much so a pre-planned, orchestrated event that's been happening for several months. I've been covering this for several months at this point. It really started gaining attention maybe about a month or two ago when drills started escalating, but this has been in the works for months, probably years, to be completely honest. I mean, this is something that is such the heart of what President Putin wants to be his legacy that it's just astonishing how open he was about it tonight. I mean, that's what really shook me. It wasn't kind of the careful language that you often see from politicians. This was him saying Ukraine shouldn't be a state. I mean, all of these former USSR countries never should have had the option to branch off. I mean, this is what the USSR, the Soviet Union, was all about, and it was just extraordinary to see that. So I'm going to do one more quick round on the feed, just make sure that we're not missing anything together, but truly an amazing day as far as escalations. I mean, I'd like to see what you guys have to say in the comments. When is the last major event that was like this in Europe? I mean, people have mentioned Crimea before, but I mean, this is more significant because, for example, under Crimea, Putin could say that he was being a reactionary, that he was surprised and kind of doing all of this in a responsive type of way, but he can't do that twice. He can't do it this time around, and in this way it's been such vocalized and so out there that we can only look at this as aggression and hostilities in a way where perhaps people weren't able to do that before with Crimea. But I mean, people have mentioned Brexit. I mean, that was a big one too, but I mean, I don't think that the decision of a democratic decision by the people of the United Kingdom amounts to what we're looking at right now, a potential invasion. I mean, they just kind of go against everything that we've known about the way the post-Cold Era world works, right? And so it's a scary time right now, but okay. So yeah, there are some other videos. Once again, not ones that I can verify or attribute to any news source right now of troops entering the Donetsk region, but I think that's a good place to wrap it up right now. I'm going to be doing these throughout the week, you guys. And, you know, to be honest, if something pops up tonight, I'll probably get back on here as well. But just be sure to keep a tab on all my feeds. I'm going live right now on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. I'll do the same on Instagram and TikTok as well. You can follow me all there. Yeah, just keep up to date with my feed. I'll be sure to go live whenever developments happen and kind of bring you the latest information that's coming in, and we can kind of digest it all together because as many of you who have been following me know, I mean, this has been one of those situations where not only does a lot happen, but there's been a lot of misinformation, a lot of fake narratives being put out there, a lot of just propaganda, for lack of a better word. I mean, we saw that not even U.S. intelligence and Ukrainian intelligence could really coordinate on their narratives. In fact, even tonight, we have to ask the question, what was Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky saying for the past couple of days when he said the West is being totally exaggerating about what's happening right now? There's no threat like this. We've got a couple of days. I mean, up to this point, I was critical at first because the United States wasn't showing the evidence behind the claims, but they've been generally right up to this point about the series of events that led us here. So there's got to be something said about what the Ukrainian intelligence was looking at. Maybe it was an intentional act in order to make sure that the people of Ukraine don't get freaked out, because that was very much so what Zelensky was saying tonight. Once again, instilling calmness throughout all of this. But the next 24 hours are going to be pivotal, so be sure to keep following right here. I'm going to be posting updates on my social media pages, let you know whenever I'm going live as well. Be sure to follow me, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, basically any social media platform, at Alex Salvi News. Be sure to send me stuff that you guys see too. I mean, I'm very responsive. I'll put it up on the screen too because, as I said, I'm learning a lot of this the same way as you guys are. So for everybody in the region, be safe. Everybody else, be diligent. Continue to stay informed. Send me the stuff that you see, and we're going to be sure to do this a lot more this week. So have a nice night, you guys. Be safe. Appreciate a little bit what you have tonight. Hug your loved ones. Take care, everyone.